So who are we missing? Okay. Where's Ryan?
We can do this. We can do this
Dan?
one of two ways.
Megan?
It would be nice if you could go
Okay.
back to your initial group.
Okay.
I'll just. Okay. Do we have everyone's attention?
I don't think we're ready yet.
Not quite. We're still, Ryan is missing. We can get started, though. Okay, we're going to begin, whether people are seated or not.
Okay,
Mr.
guys.
Smith.
Okay, so we need to have board members go back to your original area, your original goal area, and review the work from your colleagues. Take a look at what's been written, get a sense of what the sentiments were from your colleagues, and then we'll have someone from that group will report out. In some groups, if a board member would like to report out, we could allow that. Not allow, but a board member could report out. And we've been asked in other areas to have the gold champions report out. So you can go back to your groups, take a look at the work, take about 5 minutes, and then we will report out, and each group will have 5 minutes to report out.
And you will tell us when the 5 minutes are up.
I will, because we want to stay on schedule.
Thank you. Everybody back to their groups.
Do we have Kristen? Kristen.
First day at the beach.
Huh? Okay, we got half our group. Okay, Elizabeth, wait for you. Do you have a sense of what you report out? Or do you feel comfortable synthesizing?
Or we're doing each individual group separately versus I'm not collapsing all 4 groups into one.
I think you're collapsing all 4. Yeah. What were the major themes or kind of highlights of what everyone kind of said?
Alright, so we're trying to get that.
Okay, so tell us what you think.
Oh, just telling you.
Yeah, and then you can report out.
Okay, perfect. So the first one will be the one that's talking about assisting and championing. Most people agree that a desired outcome and objectives captured what they were looking for. The objectives that we got when we talk about investing in schools, it's really both people's personal and community investment in schools. Right, and then when we talk about our objectives, it's a breakdown. Right, it incorporates. I don't understand. What do you mean the personal? So they want to talk about it's not just the community's tax investment in FCPS, but it's also their time commitments and their individual contributions that they make to FCPS as a whole. One of the suggestions from one of the groups. I don't think that says that the
Do they meet here or they meet here?
They suggested putting it here. Right, but when we get to strategies, one of the things that they mentioned was coming up with a way to measure the impact that the Education Foundation, volunteers, and other people that contribute to FCPS have on that investment as a whole.
I think the personal side is confusing because, like, are you saying people are individually funding schools or something? And to me, that made it muddy.
Yeah, and I think they felt like people were contributing and they didn't want to miss that contribution. So
Then I would say individual contributions, of investing individual contributions and community resources. But personal means somebody's writing a check to fund a school or something like that, and that sounds illegal. So of course they do that. So
I
understand
understand
that.
that.
Other issue.
Yeah. Right, when they talked about the objectives, they said it's really to promote, engage, and leverage the value and benefits of the community's investment in FCPS. Right? And then the other piece in terms of the overall investing in our students is when they talked about student success, they were saying it's just not student success, it's providing each student with opportunities for success, right? And showing the community that we're providing those opportunities and leveraging or leveling the playing field. Right, so that was some of that.
To me, you don't want it to be so complicated. I get that, but I would just say in our in the opportunities provided for student success. I mean, if it gets all wordy in there, I mean, that's what the.
Correct, and that's what these are being card comments, but we went ahead and stuck them on here so each of the other groups could see what people were thinking.
In opportunities.
Right, it's investing in opportunities for student success versus just student success. But
I don't understand this one at all.
that's
Because how do you engage in the value and benefits?
I think they were thinking with the community, you want to both promote to them, engage with them, and then leverage the value.
Again, I don't like the word promote at all, because I still think promote is.
Frank, maybe leverage then is the better word as we move forward.
How about just demonstrate, communicate?
Communicate. Make it clear. Communicate. Communicate. Because that could mean in writing, that could mean through television, that could mean, on the web, I mean, it could mean anything.
Okay, so then when we look at the ideas as a whole, and I'll look at the students, they talked about measuring the contributions of other people to FCPS. You guys talked about the CIP, you also talked about the student accomplishments. Analyzing, the instruction that we provided in the intervention, that's you guys. Another group talked about communicating the meaning of data about FCPS that gets released to the public. So they talked about the data that comes out about our students that go to NOVA that need intervention. And can we better explain that data and communicate clearly? Outlining the various paths that FCPS students take to success in life. This is actually very diverse paths, and we try to focus and measure on all the college achievement.
Someplace else we talked about what's the meaning of success.
But measuring the diverse paths. Develop coalitions of other districts who work to leverage with the state. Right?
Yep.
Here, communicating the strategic plan for the Education Foundation that they wanted it to feel really connected to this board plan for resource stewardship. And then lastly, the last one is working with state, local, and federal funding sources to adequately charge for our needs. And then they talked about here, the board is working on an advocacy plan, and they wanted to make sure that that tied into this as well. So,
Well,
We'll take it more comments.
yeah.
so along with what was asking, for me, if we don't know where the students are that in company minors, it's very difficult to ask for the resources that are appropriate to fund those students. Well, that's an issue, and we're working on that.
The other group asked if, when we say responsible, if responsible for everyone denotes effective and efficient. Right, so some people were kind of split on if responsible really clearly explain effective and efficient, or do we need to use those words in that place? When we talk about aligning our resources, they talk about being clear about aligning with what, so we're aligning with our mission and our strategic plan. And then also when we talk about communicating clearly, again, should this be effectively, is clearly enough, right? Or do we also make sure we're effectively communicating?
Okay, so on this desired outcome, our key charge as constitutional officers actually says that we are charged with
Another person said it, but elected to not write it instead of maximize, optimize. They couldn't make up their minds, so they elected to not write it down, but somebody did say that.
I understand what they're trying to say, but I think most people hear maximize and don't understand that.
So in terms of some of the strategies, people ask that we broaden the notion of outsourcing, right, make it a little bit broader. More strategic ways of managing you guys, right, this was you as well. So once we get past you guys, somebody suggested withdrawing from BRS, instead considering a defined contribution, developing use. I didn't think we should always have. I don't think we can either. Right, it's a state entity, we don't have an option to not participate. I know we don't.
talking about state funding.
No, they really meant that.
I meant BRS.
Another group came by and
Yeah,
said,
the BRS element.
we don't, it's
No, but what I'm
not
saying is that could be a different,
Yeah.
a variation on the theme.
right. This person actually was running the strategies here, connected to the goal. Suggestion was to analyze our current budget alignment with strategic plan to see about mission critical spending. Enhancing the tools and search engines we have to the budget.
What does that mean?
It means not only as we allocate resources moving forward in terms of aligning a strategic plan, but going back and doing an analysis and saying, of all the money we're currently spending, right, do we feel like it's really in alignment with our new plan, via those mission critical goals? I checked about parity with county government employees in terms of total council. Is that
What parity with county government?
I think that's a philosophical question, but one of those ones that really.
It's now time for all of us to report out, so you can stay with your group and have someone report out. We do have microphones for those individuals who are going to report out. The microphone should be next to your area. Yeah.
Yes.
Are you going first?
I have a microphone. I feel like I'm in charge. I will not sing. I will not put you through that today.
While everyone's kind of gathering, please note at your, we gave you an article from Ed Week that was pretty interesting, I thought, and really in line with some of the conversations that we've been having as a system. It's called Make a Difference, Show Students You Care. I thought you might find it interesting. Now, Marty, the people who can report out are not going to report out every single item that was shared. We'll take this work, and it's our responsibility to synthesize it and incorporate it to the extent we possibly can. So you're just going to hit the high points,
We're
right?
just going to hit the high points. Okay. Steve, do you want to hit the high points on student success?
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for all the input and feedback. For the overall goal of student success, there was a lot of agreement with the objectives for the 4 different areas. And I kind of phrased it as, or help people think about it as, the 4 goals are the early childhood or ready to learn, so before students come to us, the enhancing instruction while students are with us, the assessment and data systems while students are with us, measuring, checking out how well we're doing with meeting the goals that we've set, and then college and career, getting ready for when students leave us. So the 4 big areas. Again, the objectives for all those remain pretty in agreement that we had the right objectives. I'll cut right to we had a lot of great suggestions for strategies, but I'll cut right to the area that I think, and I'll certainly defer to the board's pleasure, Dr. Garza. I think there's going to need to be some conversation around desired outcomes. While the first 3 groups were okay with the language that was stated, and this is the only goal area that had the same language for desired outcome for all 4 of these areas. One group had made a suggestion to tweak that language a little bit. Another group made a suggestion to change the language for each desired outcome depending on what the objective was. I'd be happy to read those to you, report out to you, but I think it's going to take a little more conversation than just me reporting out. Marty would.
I just want to make a comment about this because I think this is always the hard part of the board work when we work individually and where's board consensus. So the first group there, when we came back and got the overview from Steve, didn't necessarily agree with changing those, and I think we do need to talk as a board for where we are about that.
When we finish the reporting out,
then we're trying to pinpoint what are the topics of conversation that we can continue, and that's one that I've pinpointed for that one. Because clearly we're supposed to be focusing today, especially on the desired outcome and the objective, so that's something that we need to discuss.
Megan?
Since I was part of that group that noticed on this particular one, student success, the desired outcome for all 4 areas was identical. It didn't have a different desired outcome. I guess I was hoping, and maybe we can do this at the discussion, but whether it's Steve or Dr. Garza, it really surprised me because I see the value of these desired outcomes in each area, having a distinct desired outcome. And student success, in my mind, is one of the most important things we're going to be doing as a system. And I couldn't really understand then why that one ended up with the desired outcome being the same in all 4 categories. So I don't know if that's something we just want to reserve for the conversation, but what bothered me was hearing we're the only group out of 4 that noticed it, because I don't know if the other 3 groups really recognized that it was the only category out of 4 where we're just repeating the same desired outcome.
Let's let Steve finish it all and get through all of it, and then it's a place where we can come back and discuss.
Okay. Just for clarification, would you like me to read the suggestions, or?
I think particularly with the desired outcome,
Okay.
it would be good to review that because there appears to be difference of ideas on that one.
Okay, I'll start here then with the early childhood objective. The original desired outcome was all students will achieve their full potential, achievement gaps will be eliminated. A suggestion was all students enter kindergarten ready to learn. The second area for enhancing instruction while students are with us, again, desired outcome, all students achieve their full potential, achievement gaps will be eliminated. 2 suggestions here. All students obtain an education that fosters lifelong learning and pursuit of individual goals. The other suggestion is provide a dynamic learning environment that inspires lifelong learners. For assessment and data systems, which you can't really see behind here, there were no suggestions to change the desired outcome to that, so that remains all students achieve their full potential, achievement gaps will be eliminated. And finally, for the college and career objective, the desired outcome, there was a couple of suggestions here. First, a group suggested that we change it to say FCPS will provide the opportunity for all students to reach their full potential, and achievement gaps will be reduced or minimized. And then another suggestion was all students graduate with the skills they need for the workforce, college, and life as adults. And those are the suggestions to desired outcomes. Lots of great suggestions for strategies, too, throughout.
And I guess that's my question. Are we going to talk about the strategies that were suggested? We'll just let those be the sticky notes at the bottom.
If I might, just because we have such a limited amount of time with you all, I think strategies, we'll have an opportunity to go more in depth next time.
Okay.
And we'll take all of those ideas and reflect them in the work that we have additional strategies too that we didn't show you today. Really what I think would be beneficial, at least I think, to our team would be this conversation around, do you want distinct and different desired outcomes, or the one outcome? The one objective and one outcome.
Okay, and I guess, Dr. Garza, would you like us to resolve this issue now, or do you want us to go through all of these and then return?
Why don't we go through all of them, because I would imagine this is the one that's going to require the most conversation, and I think that's very appropriate.
Right.
So I think we can probably report out on the others and get back to maybe this one if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Kim?
So caring culture, I think that overall, all 4 groups really looked at that within this second one, FCPS students and staff will make healthy life choices, that it didn't indicate that support in our efforts. And so there was some great language offered by the group that can be incorporated here. And then the last one that we didn't have as much time to talk about because it came in the last group, was under this objective to strengthen school organization, culture, and responsiveness. The last group added modeling and promoting these attributes to others, captured a lot of the things that people were saying about making a caring organization. If we behave in this way as teachers to students and teachers to teachers, then we're also modeling that for how we influence the community to behave in that way. We had a lot of great strategies, and I would just highlight a couple in looking at uniformity around practices across schools, student voice, and teacher voice, as well as the ability to look at how do you react to issues across schools. Some schools do it very well just instinctively, and others it's part of the culture of client service that we need to increase. Anything else, Janie or Ted, that you remember, Megan, from our...
Okay, Premier Workforce. We had lots of good feedback, and so thank you for that. We had some discussion around, really from the last group, around the language of the goal area, wanting to ensure that we can create as an employee-centric focus as we can with the language. There were also some questions about the overall goal, not that it's not the right goal, but that ensuring that we see pieces of the goal throughout our work. And so ensuring that we are investing in our employees, encouraging innovation, and celebrating success, and wanting to see that in the objectives as well as in the work plan strategies. We're not going to go through each one, and we don't have the luxury of having all of our work spread out. And we felt that that may have hindered some of the work, but we did get some excellent feedback. Lots of good strategies around retention and recruiting of teachers. Lots of feedback from you in terms of where we're finding teachers, how we're preparing those teachers, how we're preparing all staff, how we onboard staff, being very intentional about our hiring practices and our interviewing practices. So overall, lots of good work around our goals. The only real changes to our desired outcomes, some wordsmithing around looking at we'll maintain a high-quality workforce that feels valued, respected, and rewarded for its efforts. And in some of the other areas, we looked at taking out some of that language that was antiseptic or institutional and making it more employee-centric.
In terms of resource stewardship, when we look at our first desired outcome in terms of being accountable and responsible, some of the feedback we got was, would the community understand that responsible is effective and efficient? And then when we look at our objectives, when we talk about aligning resources, do we need to add clarity that we're aligning those resources with our mission and strategic plan? And then when we're communicating clearly, do we need to say communicating clearly and effectively? So we also received many good strategies. Just giving an example of one is analyze our current budget's alignment with the new strategic plan, for example. Our second desired outcome talked about stakeholders having an increased understanding of our operating and capital needs, and then understanding the importance of investing in our student success. We had conversations about when we talked about investing, do we mean just community investing, or do we also mean people's individual contributions towards FCPS? And then we also talked about, are we investing in our student success, or are we investing in ensuring that we're offering opportunities for student success? Again, we received many great strategy alignments. Some of these have to do with things like outlining the various paths that FCPS students can take in terms of achieving success in life and making sure that we're documenting those and including those in our documentation.
Okay, so Dr. Garza, we'll return to the discussion on the student success piece, and I guess what we need to determine is whether or not we want to change the wording for the desired outcome, whether or not we keep the same wording all against the 4 areas, or we change them. And I guess I would go back to the first group that worked on it, because I understand that I guess let's hear both sides of it.
Why don't I start?
Sure,
you don't
you
mind.
start.
If
You
you
go
don't mind. This one was harder for us, and we did, as we looked at it, and I know that Steve, I encourage you to weigh in here because we had a working group, and Steve championed that, and had a lot of input into this piece. And I think the initial thinking on the desired outcome being the same for each, whereas we needed to break the work down into 4 major chunks because it's different pieces of work that we needed, improving classroom practice, making sure our technology tools were working for our employees, that we're focused on early school readiness, and then college career readiness, all major pieces of that work. I think the thought was a desired outcome really is the same for all of them. It's all discrete chunks of work, but it's all for the same purpose. And that is that all children, all students are able to achieve to their fullest potential, and that our achievement gaps are eliminated or reduced to the extent we possibly can. And every discrete part contributed to that. Now, if it's the board's will or desire to have different outcomes for each of those, we can certainly go back and look to write outcomes that are specific to the individual and discrete objectives, because that was the way it was done in these other areas. It's just the student success one is so big and so broad. That's just kind of the way we approached it, but I'm not saying it's the perfect way. So we're open to going about it in either way. Steve, I didn't know if you wanted to add to that.
I think you pretty much captured it. There was a lot of conversation too about explicitly speaking to the achievement gap in each of these goals, so that it wasn't forgotten. And this work kind of dovetails, not kind of, it dovetails a lot some of the work that Sloan and his group had done with closing the achievement gap in the previous year. A lot of the big objective areas are drivers for closing the achievement gap: college and career readiness, ready to learn, the whole academic piece and the rigor piece, parent and community engagement, which was a lot of the strategies outlined there. So part of the thinking was we didn't want to lose sight of the gap.
I agree with that, and that has been emphasized over and over again. We want to make sure that the community understands that's a major priority for us. If it gives any help on this if this is helpful to this conversation, the metrics or the indicators, once those are completed, which would be underneath that, they're very extensive. So there are a lot of measures that we would actually tie in to each of these.
Artie, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Karen
Okay.
was right there with it.
Okay, Ms. Smith.
So I can understand, since the other ones are different, to have some different pieces. But the one, it's hard because I can't see the one. The one back there, it wasn't suggested to change. The one about student success, it's right there, that's to enhance instruction. I think it's vitally important to keep that desired outcome that we have there, because that, to me, is the key to everything. And so as you align your practices and your resources and all those parts of it, you want to ensure that kids are reaching their full potential and that the gaps are closed. And so I think that broad statement is vitally important to that piece of it, because that needs to be the main driver of where we go for kids. And it's hard to know how to talk about this. The other piece, and we saw it because we were the first group and we sat there last, is that there was a suggestion that maybe we say we minimize gaps, or we bring words that are more real to maybe where things end up. I am a strong advocate that we word it the way you originally did. We have to be about all students. We have to be about closing the gap or eliminating the gap. And I think when you set out those high standards, then you're working to that. You don't create little pieces where you can have excuses not to do it for all. I understand that it's hard to achieve, that, there's that definition of does all really mean all, but I think that's the basis of where we need to go. The other two that there were suggestions for, I'm more interested in talking about those perhaps to see if that could be different, but I think the two especially need to keep the original wording.
Ms. Schultz?
So in talking about the flip side of the coin, I also think that we need to have some fidelity and integrity with our own goals. And if our goals and our outcomes are not achievable via means of the resources that we have available, then I think it does a disservice to the organization to set out a goal that we know we're not going to achieve. And to say that we will completely eliminate an achievement gap decries the responsibility of anyone else in the process. What is the commitment of the state legislature in funding? What is the commitment of the board of supervisors in funding? What is the commitment of the family in emphasizing education? What is the commitment of the student to not be truant and to show up to school and do their homework? And so what that does is it shifts all the responsibility onto us and says that the school system in and of itself has the power and ability to eliminate an achievement gap. And that is it's not that it's a high goal, it's not a realistic goal, and it won't be achieved, and therefore we put ourselves at the middle of a bullseye and will always be targeted for not ever achieving our goal. So I think what we need to understand is that the courageous part of the conversations that have to happen beyond a school system also contribute and are attributable to the success of a student. And so, I have a huge problem with us setting out and establishing a desired outcome and goal that we ourselves do not have the resources or capacity to achieve.
Mr. Moon.
Sorry that I came late. It's good not to be the chair. Having said that, I will support the desired outcome. I understand. I do not necessarily disagree with what Mr. Short just said. You probably need to get into a courageous conversation that it's not just the school system or teachers in classrooms who are responsible for the success of our students' achievement. Granted that if you think that the eliminating achievement gap in entirety is an impossible task, you could say the same thing about all students receiving their full potential, because it's not going to be just a school system or teachers or our curriculum or funding that's responsible for a student's achieving the full potential. Students themselves will have to work hard. There will have to be a family support and community support, etc. But as an ultimate desired outcome, that is something we should aspire to, and I will support that.
Ms. McLaughlin?
So I want to say I agree with what Mr. Moon said. We talked about it in our group, and the bottom line is it is a desired outcome. And I think that it is very important that we know it's a challenge nationally, but for one of the largest top performing school systems, not to say this is it's our desired outcome. Whether we can get there, we're going to have to keep working at it. And if that has to be revised in years to come when nationally we start to look at that language, but I right now do believe that since that's our desire, and as a board and as a system, we need to keep that language there. In terms of the explanation for having the same desired outcome across all four of the different objectives, I'm really struggling with that. I was so excited by what I saw here today, and I look at the four different areas, and part of the reason you want diverse desired outcomes elucidated is because you've got your goal, and then you want to build off of that goal, or then identify from that goal what do we hope to then have as the outcome. And I think it loses its power when you have desired outcome be the same in all four areas. And I think we also limit ourselves from being able to I think highlight or spotlight some of the key desired outcomes we want in student success. In my mind, this is the most critical of the four areas in our strategic plan. And, I liked some of the suggestions that our group brought forward for having different language and desired outcomes. Certainly trust Dr. Garza and her staff to look at those suggestions. But, and I do agree with what Ms. Smith was saying about where you want to have desired outcome. There being students achieving their full potential when you're talking about the objective of enhanced instruction. But one of the things that I and Mr. Velkoff both tried to emphasize in that particular one about enhanced instruction and curriculum is that we are losing the joy and the passion of teaching, both for our kids and our students. And that was one of the things that when we talk about when we commit to reach, challenge, and prepare every student for success in school and life, don't we want one of the desired outcomes that they want to be a lifelong learner? I mean, if we don't inspire their passion to learn in K-12, they will leave our system and we've missed an opportunity. So I do hope that this board will see the value of having differentiated desired outcomes for student success. And I actually think it weakens the strategic plan when of all 4 areas, the key component, which is student success, and that one, we just keep repeating the same desired outcome. I think we really don't do service to that work. But so that would be my advocacy to my colleagues, is I hope that we can direct the superintendent to look at how we can really make those desired outcomes powerful and speak to how we then capture that overarching goal for our students.
Mr. Velkoff.
Thank you, Mrs. Strauss. We've actually got 2 conversations going. One's about the achievement gap, and the other is about the language here. So I think I just want to talk about the achievement gap first and then come back to the language, because I think we're having a rather important discussion about it. And I'm sorry Mrs. Schultz isn't here, because I agree with her comments. The national conversation, there are people in the country who do say that it is the responsibility of schools and schools alone to close the achievement gap. And that's simply not reasonable. What we're not doing is pointing out that that's letting communities and elected officials off the hook for the fact that we have generational poverty, resegregation, and increasing income disparity in this country. And the roots of this problem are societal, and they're beyond the schools. So we should be firing back at those folks and putting other people in the hot seat as well. Of course we have a responsibility, and our school system's all about doing everything that we can before the children get here and while they are here. But I think it's time that we start placing some more of that responsibility outside the schools. I like to think of this actually as an opportunity gap, because that's what the problem is, right? The students are not arriving with the same opportunities, and that's what number 1 is up there. So I just wanted to make those comments on the achievement gap, and when we conclude that, I'll have a couple of comments on the desired outcomes.
Okay, I guess that's the question. If anybody else wishes to comment on, and you're right, because we're talking about the language on the achievement gap, and then whether or not we want to keep consistent the language across all those areas. Dr. Garza?
Let me see, I think I might have a potential solution on the first of the questions, and that has to do with the objective statements. I think there is a way for us to go back, because we have a really smart group of people, to go back and both not lose the essence of the achieving the full potential and the achievement gaps, and add a little bit more specificity related to a particular goal. Do you see what I'm saying? So for an example, in the area of early childhood, I think we could look at the desired outcome, maintain the essence of that statement, but adding maybe a by piece to it. Because I do think it's important to continue to emphasize those 2 things, making sure the public knows that achievement gaps are very important to us, but maybe we add the by at the end, Steve. I think there's maybe a way to make it a little bit more specific to the objective area, because we've done that in all places. So if you would maybe give us a shot at that, is that a good?
Okay,
board
yeah,
members
I was
okay
gonna
with
say-
that?
Yeah, I was going to propose that as a way to get around. Is there consensus then to send this back to staff, to keep some consistency across all the areas, and then add more language that is more specific to what comes underneath that? Can I see, is there, by a show of hands, is there consensus comfort with doing that?
I have a question.
Yes.
Karen, are you specifically talking about changing the language under objectives and keeping the desired outcome the same? I'm not sure I understood what you said.
Each of the objectives, there are 4 objective areas in the student success. And the point I think that was being made by some of your colleagues.
Desired outcomes.
I know, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
There are 4 objective areas under student success, and like some others, right, they're like sub-goals. This one, the desired outcome was specific. It was the same for all 4. With the others, it was different.
Right.
And I think what we're hearing from some of your colleagues, there should be more specificity between the desired outcome and the objective itself. And I'm saying, I think we can go back and flush it out a little bit more to see that we could do that while not losing the essence of the achievement gap piece.
Okay. Yes.
All right, so I guess I still have my question then, though. If you add more that word to the desired outcome, I mean, to the objective, would you then?
It's desired outcome.
To the desired outcome. Okay.
Okay.
Like a bias statement.
Okay.
Okay, just a second,
To
Megan.
match the current objectives. So not changing the current objectives, changing the desired outcome by adding a descriptor statement, and then matching more or less what the objectives are
Combining
there.
both thoughts, that what staff
Well-
had suggested, and then being able
Okay.
to bring in what some of our colleagues had suggested.
Thank you for the clarity, everyone.
Okay, let me hear other people who haven't had a chance to speak. Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Mrs. Strauss. I wanted to follow up on what's been said, but also ask a few questions just to kind of gain the context. The time frame for the strategic plan, is it like a 5-year or something? As we talk about these aspirations, do we have some kind of a time frame in mind?
I think with a typical strategic plan, it used to be 5 to 10 years. I think that's way too long in this environment. So I think most strategic plans, I think Hank and Jean would tell you, I think they've suggested 3 to 5 years.
Okay, that's helpful.
And then on an annual basis, we'll have to come back and revisit it.
Yeah, okay, thanks. And then in terms of assumptions, I think following up on what Mrs. Schultz and Mr. Velkoff said, somewhere I think we need to articulate and acknowledge that we have a role, but that others have roles also. And to that extent, I know when our group was over at the Caring Culture, at that desired outcome, we decided, or at least suggested, that the language be changed so that it's focused more on what FCPS can do. So I don't, maybe that's just something to think about, but especially with achievement gap, we all agree that's a very significant issue and challenge. But there are others who have a role, so how do we articulate that? It's like, we'll do our part, but others need to do their part.
I think that's a very important question. I don't have it right at my fingertips, but I think that would have us go back and maybe when we come back in November, revisiting our value statement, belief statements, because I think that's where you capture that it's not us working solely by ourselves, that it takes an entire community. So I think some of what you're talking about could be intimated in the value and belief statements, vision and belief statements.
But further, I think in the desired outcome, maybe there's a way to also articulate, you know, what FCPS will provide an opportunity to, do these things, right? Again, as opposed to us solving all the world's problems all on our own. You know, I'm being facetious, but you get the message, right? Thank you.
I would like to return to the first question to see if we've resolved that before we go back, more discussion on the achievement gap. And it is, again, whether or not we will accept Dr. Garza's suggestion about how to reword the other piece. Is there, okay, yes.
So I appreciate what Dr. Garza is saying is sort of a, maybe a compromise. But what concerns me about that is looking at the fact that this is a strategic plan and we have these key areas of our strategic plan with a goal, and you look all around at all of these other categories. If you look at it from the macro level down to the micro level, why would we want to communicate to the public that when it comes to student success, we've only got one desired outcome without any specificity? So that's, I guess, what I would ask Dr. Garza, this is my question before we vote, is would you and the team be willing to look at the merits, like discuss among yourselves the merits of the desired outcome coming from the goal, that it's not every single time, it's just about the eliminating the achievement gap is one of our desired outcomes in this school system. But it's not the only outcome out of this school system. And I think we lose that opportunity to spotlight and highlight that if our desired outcome is the same for every one of our areas of student success. So I guess I'm just wondering, when you say you're going to take it back and reconsider it as a team, could one of the options still be that you might end up with 4 different desired outcomes as opposed to it's going to be the same language and whether or not you tweak them or not? That's where I'm.
Well, I think we're trying to see a consensus. My sense is, the last time I asked for consensus, it looked as though there was agreement that we would send it back and Dr. Garza would work with staff with the proposal that she had. I will try once more, because we need to go on.
Let me go ahead and answer
Yes,
this,
okay.
because I know we probably could spend a couple hours just debating the approach, right? Because this is really about approach and the way that we organize. The challenge, and just would have you think about it just for a minute, is you had, or we had, desired outcome, the achievement gap is just one prong. Do you realize then a lot of these would so overlap? For an example, there are things that we do in the areas of college career readiness that are specific to the elimination of the achievement gap. Their area of early childhood, oh my goodness, that's all a lot about closing the achievement gap. In the area of enhancing instruction, that's about also closing the achievement gap. So that's what we run into from an organizational perspective. I mean, I'm not talking about organization. I'm talking about how we organize these thoughts. Is how do you separate them out so that you're not completely reiterating over and over again, because these are so mutually supportive, and they overlap a whole lot. So that's the only challenge. But we'll try. I mean, I think the best we probably could do is make it a little bit more explicit to the objective. But if you all do not, want completely different desired outcomes, I think it does create a problem down the road. I just do, just because on the data and assessments, that's also about measuring growth and progress toward everyone achieving to a standard. So I get the point, but I think the best probably of both worlds is leaving a little bit of the nature of that in there, but adding a little bit more specificity.
My sense is I think that we have a consensus on this. I will check once more, what is the mood on whether or not we go along with what Dr. Garza has suggested in wordsmithing this a bit. Okay?
No,
We're asking for a sense of where we're going to go, or are we going to continue to wordsmith?
sort of moving this to consensus, and I don't think discussion is finished.
Okay, all right.
I'll try to be brief because I know that we're trying to move on here. Listening to what Ms. McLaughlin said, and just for a minute, just thinking about some of our conversations in the past. When I think of desired outcomes in the buckets, one might be all children reading by 3rd grade. That's one that we've talked about for years. I don't see that up there. I don't know if that would be a strategy, but in my mind, then eliminate achievement gap. That would be another bucket, and then there would be a whole bunch of stuff underneath that. Allowing children to reach their full potential. Maybe that's another outcome. That's another way to slice it. I'm just thinking there are many ways that you can slice it. So I'm just throwing that out there because this is the way that I'm looking at it is very different. And I agree that having the same language, I think, dilutes what you're trying to do. But I also hear what you're saying, that it's all interrelated. But this is very, very important. And I think the achievement gap should be screaming off the page. And I feel like it's buried now, to be honest with you, the way that, because it's in so many things and it's here and it's there, that's how I'm viewing it.
Okay.
Right?
We'll have Ms. Schultz, and then Mr. Kofax, and we're going to take the temperature again, because I think everybody's had a chance to weigh in.
Okay.
Ms. Schultz?
So, Steve, if you would, because I acknowledge that Kathy made the point that that it's a desired outcome to have the achievement gap closed. Well, but you said that is, because you spoke after me and you said it's the desired outcome. I think that we did provide alternate language for that. You didn't get a chance to read that because it was summarized. But again, the question is, this is a message that we're not only communicating to the community, to students, to families, but we're communicating it to teachers. So if we set as a strategic desired outcome from a strategic goal of this division that we will close the achievement gap, the we becomes the teacher. Then it becomes the teacher's job, considering the way we've changed teacher evaluation. This puts it all on the teacher's plate, but it's the teacher's job to close that achievement gap. And it disclaims the responsibility of federal resources, state resources, local resources, family commitment, parental involvement, student commitment to learning. It disclaims all of that and just lays it squarely at the feet of the teacher, who is now evaluated on student success, on whether that student achieves or not. And then we've piled on top of it, oh, by the way, on top of everything else, you're going to close the achievement gap. And that is a totally unreasonable desired outcome. I understand the aspirational nature of it from some of my colleagues, that in a perfect world we would love to have zero achievement gap. But the real issue on the table is that it is not, that if we did everything right for every single child in every single classroom for all 13 K through 12 that they were here, we still wouldn't resolve all of the issues that are out there. And so there is so much that we can do and acknowledge by what's on our plate and what happens within the classroom, but a child's life does not stop, and their learning doesn't stop when they leave the transom of the school. And so I want to be very careful, because what we're doing is we're crafting the strategic message that we're sending on where we're going. And I think that this is a burden shift onto teachers that is not achievable. And if we would never put on a student a goal that isn't achievable and say, this is what we expect you to do. So why would we do that to our own employees?
Okay, Mr. Anna Kofax, then Ms. Smith, and then I would like to take the temperature again, because I think unless there is some totally new point that somebody wants to introduce. Mr. Anna Kofax.
I'm not going to speak specifically to the achievement gap. What I am going to speak to is that desired outcome. When you talk about all students will achieve fullest potential, I think that encompasses everything. And when you look at each of those, and if Karen adds a by statement to work with that objective, I think that will be very helpful. The argument, how the gap will be eliminated, or we will strive to, or right now, I think a strategic plan in some ways is a blue sky document. And I think if you don't want to blue sky it, then change the words. But I know I've been called Pollyanna before, but I absolutely think that, and I disagree, Ms. Reed. I don't think it's buried. I think by keeping it there as part of all the desired outcomes, it is first and foremost. And I don't disagree with Mr. Velkovs knows I don't disagree with what he said, nor do I disagree with what you said, Ms. Schultz. But I do think there is a time and a place to say, let's go for the gold. We may not make silver or bronze, and we may not, even place in the top 10. But I think we need to look at it in terms of that, and I think the by statements will help. And so I would be in agreement with reviewing it from that strategy.
Okay, Ms. Smith, and then Ms. Evans, who hasn't spoken yet. Ms.
Thank you.
Smith?
I agree with Tammy's statements, and all stakeholders are engaged and well-informed partners. Okay, we know all of them won't be, but our responsibility is to say all students will achieve their full potential and achievement gaps will be eliminated. That's the goal I have. I don't think we want to create a situation where we send the message that, most. And the other piece that I think's missing in this, and some of the things that Mr. Velkoff referenced and all, we delayed our school board advocacy piece for what we're going to fight for and take a more active role until we got through more of the strategic planning process. In the group I was in with Sandy and Tammy, now I'm seeing the nuggets of the pieces that we as a board can start to advocate for and work on. So we'll be in a place to put that together. But I think that where we're sitting up here leading the direction of the district, we have to be about all. We have to be about eliminating. Not to say that other people aren't responsible, but this is about the responsibility of the expectation we want to set for every kid. And I don't support downgrading that, even though there's difficulties.
Ms. Evans?
I support what Karen's recommending. I think it kind of gives us the best of both worlds. It accentuates the overarching goal and at the same time differentiates from the 4 different goal areas. As Steve articulated that very well, that we have 4 distinct areas. So I think that's a good way of going about it. So I do support that, and I think that's what we are going to get consensus on that before we go into wordsmithing. I will just say briefly, I think we need to aspire to eliminating the achievement gap. I think we have to also define what we mean by it, but we have to aspire to eliminate it.
Thank you. I haven't spoken yet. I agree with what Dr. Garza has suggested on wordsmithing a little bit on desired outcomes, and I agree with people about blue sky. We need to aspire to closing the achievement gap. Okay, I would like to take a temperature of the group so we can go on. First, I'm going to ask, we'll break it apart because I think that's where people are most comfortable. First, how many people agree to let Dr. Garza add some of that more language to the, that's right, but to also keep the beginning part of it consistent throughout? Desired outcomes, yes, okay. So, please let me know how many people are comfortable with that approach. Yes.
Let me, you want to restate real quick, that we would take the desired outcome, maintain the essence of that statement, but add some alignment to the objective component.
Right. Okay. All right. I need to know how many people are comfortable with that approach. Okay. Then that's the approach we'll take with that. Thank you. And then the other piece is, do we leave the language aspirational to close the achievement gap? I think everybody's had a chance to weigh in on that, unless there's somebody who wishes to speak who hasn't talked about that specific area yet. No. Okay. All those, let's get a sense. How many people would like to leave the language with regard to the achievement gap as it is stated there? All right, then that stays that. Okay, I think we have consensus on the direction, Dr. Garza. Okay, is there anything else that we need to do on this section?
Thank you for your time. This is some of the most important work that we do, so I appreciate the fact that you were so engaged, and the conversations, I think, in the small groups were very good. So we got a lot of great input. We'll take that and continue to work with the team to incorporate all of the great feedback that we've gotten today. So we'll be working on that between now and the November work session. So you can anticipate the November work session receiving a draft, fully fleshed out plan, which would include the changes we've talked about with desired outcomes, that you would get specific measures or under the indicators, and you'll get lots of strategies with all the detail associated with it for us to work on next time. So thank you very much, and we'll stop there. And thank you, Marty, for your work today, along with the team.
Thank you. I did have, Ms. Evans said she did have something else that she wanted to contribute.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on what Patty had mentioned. The one area that I do think really needs some work is in under caring culture and that desired outcome. I think a couple of the groups had pointed out that we also need to talk about what we're doing. That we need to provide a healthful culture, a healthful environment for our students.
Yeah, there was a great deal of stuff on the yellow pieces, so I'm assuming that you will take that, that is the consensus, that that will be taken into consideration as you wordsmith the rest of that. Okay? All right, then I think we need to go on. And
We're done.
is there next steps? Is there, no?
Oh, actually, no, there is a next step. I'm
I
sorry.
think the next step is
Yeah, the
to,
next
for
step
us
is
to
what-
take it
Yeah.
and run with
Yeah.
it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
The next step is for this goes back to Dr. Garza and staff.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know. Pam, do we need to see it up there? Next step, Dr. Garza, to add language to student success, desired outcomes, maintaining essence of statement, add alignment to objective component. Does that sound good?
Yes, but I think it's just overall for us to take all the feedback from all the varied groups at all the different charts. And so I don't think you have to elaborate that much. It's just that we will take all the feedback from school board on all the 4 goal areas and bring
okay.
it forward
So we'll
in a
add
draft
that?
plan.
Did you get that, Pam?
Okay.
What-
Okay? All right, okay.
Okay, so
Thank you.
we'll take a 5-minute break, so Kathy has time to use the restroom, and then we'll see you at 3:15.
All right.
Okay.
Good job, meeting manager. Boy. I know. Oh, well. It's always the case.
It's one thing if people have information, but when you start repeating yourself.
I know.
I think that was probably having to do with this discussion.